Thank you for joining us. California is known as the most beautiful state in the USA, with beaches and redwood forests, Disneyland and high-tech Silicon Valley, and so much more. The Golden State also has a rich multicultural and Jewish history as well. Our guest today is California Senator Jeff Stone, who will share his thoughts on California and current affairs, following these messages.
Life Extension magazine brings you new discoveries in health and anti-aging. Our science-based research and supplements are so advanced they're many years ahead of the medical mainstream, with quality control standards that exceed FDA mandates. Life Extension has covered groundbreaking medical research for more than 35 years. For your health and future, you deserve the best. Learn more at lifeextension.com.
Orange County, California is located halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego. Known throughout the world for Disneyland, surfing, and conservative politics, it also happens to be the 11th largest Jewish community in the United States. Many people are surprised when they hear this, because although close to 100,000 Jews live and thrive here, the myth that Orange County isn't a good place to be Jewish still lives on. To try and understand why, the Orange County Jewish Historical Society went back to where it all began. They sifted through hundreds of old photographs, visited archives and libraries, checked out websites and interviewed longtime Jewish residents. What they found was both illuminating and surprising. Orange County represents a unique place in American Jewish history, and to help explain it, we take you behind the orange curtain and present you with the real story of the Jews of Orange County.
With us now is California State Senator Jeff Stone. A real honor and privilege to meet you, sir.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you for the interview.
Pleasure, sir. Now, you actually are a senator in this very spacious, immense, large state. So tell us a little bit about the challenges you face. In fact, your district, you have about 1 million constituents yourself.
We do. So we have about 40 state senators, and we each represent about 1 million people. 40 million people live in California. And I have one of the largest geographical areas of any county pretty much in the country. Riverside County goes from the Orange County border all the way to the Arizona border, bordering the San Bernardino County and San Diego counties. So I have a district the size of the state of New Jersey. So it takes me 4 hours to get from one side to the other, but I'm really honored and delighted that I represent the Palm Springs area, taking in Palm Desert, Indian Wells, Rancho Mirage, all the way to Blythe, which is a big agricultural area of the county and certainly part of the breadbasket of the state of California that feeds not only our state, but feeds the world.
So important.
Yeah.
People take so much for granted and don't appreciate and value the importance of these things. How do you see the challenges facing the great United States at this time?
Well, I don't think there's no question that we have a divided country. But if you look at the direction that our country's been going in the past couple of years, we see unemployment at the lowest levels we've ever seen. We see African Americans more employed than ever been. Hispanics, which I represent a lot of Hispanics, unemployment never as low as it's ever been. But we have our problems in the state of California, especially with illegal immigration. We have a very porous border. We have 180 immigrants that are being brought to the Blythe area in the eastern end of my district and basically given to the county and said, feed them, house them, clothe them, and it's a big expense. And so, the federal government's got to get their act together and they've got to close the border down. And listen, we're a country of immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants that came to this country. There's a right way to come in and there's a wrong way to come in. And unfortunately, with the policies that we've seen that the left likes to embrace, open borders is not in our best interest. We need to secure the borders, making sure that we have friends that are coming in and making sure that people don't advance to the front of the line, that they fill out the appropriate paperwork, and we welcome immigrants here. This is the land of opportunity. My grandparents came here with nothing. I was brought up in a very blue-collar household. My parents struggled, put me through the USC School of Pharmacy, where I got a doctorate in pharmacy. I've taught in universities, and then I had this crazy urge after opening 6 pharmacies to run for office at the city level, and ran and won, beat an incumbent, and 12 years later, after 3 terms, I was talked into running for county supervisor in the 10th largest county in the country, Riverside County. And I was the first guy to defeat an incumbent in 37 years. And then after serving 3 terms, I decided to go to the state, and I'm proudly serving in my 5th year in the state legislature.
And people are talking about pressing you for further steps in ascending direction. And I think that would be excellent, because there are sadly not enough people of integrity who want to lead in any particular area, especially in politics, I would say.
Well, I've loved being an elected official. I would say I love being a pharmacist first and an elected official second, but it does my heart a lot of good when we can make somebody's life better. I have 10 wonderful employees that work outside of the capital of the state, Sacramento, and we make sure people are fed, we make sure people have housing, we make sure people have adequate representation if they get into a criminal activity. But enhancing the quality of life of the 1 million people that I represent and the 40 million collectively that the 40 senators represent is a daunting task, but it is really, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be an elected official and having won almost 8 elections. And I'm not sure where my future holds for me, but I always said I wanted to serve at all levels of government. So I've done the city, the county, the state. I haven't served at the federal level yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. All I know is that I have 5 wonderful grandkids now. I had twin girls that were born 4 weeks ago, and I'm tempted to get back into the private sector and be a grandpa that spoils his grandkids.
That's most commendable, Senator. But I hear that there are some people who really would like to see you still staying in politics, in fact, going into more national situations. And it must be rather difficult for you as a senator in this very, as they say, liberal state. And I try to be as impartial as possible. I'm not supposed to take sides, really. But you happen to be a rare Republican senator in this vast state. So how difficult is that?
Well, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm the only Republican Jewish legislator in the entire state of California. One and only. Of course, we have a Democratic Jewish caucus. I'm the one and only member of the Republican Jewish caucus, just me. But a lot of people think that because we're so outnumbered in Sacramento that we don't get anything done. But frankly, the converse is true. And it's just like anything else. Either the private sector or the public sector, you develop relationships with people and you try to find common ground. And I've been able to find common ground with many very liberal Democrats. I'm a conservative Republican. And we've actually co-authored legislation that enhances the quality of life of Californians. Certainly there's a lot of things we disagree on. And that's okay. But I would say that in the Senate of the state of California, it's a very collegiate body, that we respect each other when we go on the floor. We can vociferously disagree and debate issues on the floor, and sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But the good thing is that we always walk off the floor being friends. It never becomes personal, and for that, I'm grateful.
That, of course, is essential. But as this is the Shalom Show, I'd like to bring up a topic that is perhaps a little controversial. Mm-hmm. You were here in the home of Robert and Tony Kramer, and she is the co-founder of Trumpets USA.
Yes.
And she has these gala events celebrating the president, and he is the president of the United States. Whether all people like that or not, it's a fact. We have to respect the office. And he did some rather spectacular, amazing things.
Yes, he has.
Moving the embassy to Jerusalem was absolutely an earth-shattering,
yes,
immense achievement, very important. And now, while we did this last event with Tony in Palm Beach, he recognized the sovereignty of the Golan Heights. And I visited the Golan Heights. You dig a hole there, you'll see Jewish stars and excavations, archaeological evidence of an existence of a Jewish presence there long before Islam ever existed.
Right.
So what are your thoughts with regard to the moves that he's made politically, which are really big headline subjects?
You know, actions speak louder than words, especially in politics. You have a lot of politicians that like to spew off a lot of rhetoric about what they should do and what they can do and what they will do. It's very rare to find a politician that actually keeps their word. So I am very impressed with President Trump and his support for Israel, especially as a Jewish American that had relatives that perished in the ovens in Auschwitz, and understanding the importance of Israel being the hometown state, if you will, for Jewish people that have been certainly persecuted and found a home there in 1948. I was just in Israel. I was just in the Golan Heights. I was just at the embassy in Jerusalem. And I can't tell you what pride I had in being in Israel and seeing this progress. You know, the Democrats have always said that they were the friends of Israel, that they were the friends of Jewish people. And I think President Trump has shown that that support is bipartisan. I have to be honest with you, I was no fan of President Obama when he signed the Iran deal and basically gave the enemies of the state of Israel and the United States the keys to a nuclear weapon. Anybody that thinks for a moment that Iran can be trusted is fooling themselves. And unfortunately, the Obama administration had a lot of Democratic Jews swallowing the Kool-Aid and getting them to believe that this was really in the best interest of the United States and in the best interest of Israel. Kudos to Benjamin Netanyahu. I was in Washington, D.C. at the AIPAC convention when that deal was coming to fruition. And the President Obama's representatives that were speaking at AIPAC did not get the warmest reception. And I think that deal's been a disaster. And I'm very proud. I think one of the accomplishments that I think President Trump will go down in history for doing was dismantling the Iran nuclear deal. And I fully support the president in bringing a lot of our defensive machinery into the Persian Gulf and making it very clear that the days of Iran picking on the United States of America and attacking Jews is not going to be tolerated anymore. I'm not saying that I wish for a war. I'm not saying that I wish for a confrontation, but I've known throughout my political career that sometimes you have to show force to keep the peace. And I think that's what this president has done, and I applaud him for it. And I hope that we can make Iran an honest arbiter in their true ambitions with their nuclear program and ensure that we stop the furtherance of a nuclear program that could basically create a national security nightmare for Israel and even the United States of America.
And just actually today, there was news through Israeli intelligence that they are accelerating their nuclear program, it so happens.
I don't think that should come to any surprise of skeptics like me. I believe that their nuclear program has been designed first and foremost to come up with weapons of mass destruction. They could say that they want to have a peaceful energy, clean energy program. You know something, I don't remember Iran being at the Paris Peace Accords in the best interest of global warming when they're sitting on the largest oil reserves probably on the globe. Why would a country with the oil reserves that Iran has need nuclear power to energize their country? It's so transparent what they're trying to do. And the minute they get the bomb, then they have political blackmail on anyone, including the United States, that they see in their sights. And I don't want to say we're going to be defenseless, but we should never get to that position where we put the United States and our allies in harm's way of a nuclear weapon coming from Tehran.
What a shame that such considerations can even be pondered over. That is really very, very unfortunate, and I do hope for intelligent resolutions to that.
Me as well.
Yeah, of course. I'd like to change topics for a moment and ask you for your thoughts with regard to the fact that half the millennials in this country never heard of Auschwitz.
You know, I think it's alarming. I mean, the way millennials get their information is much different than the way you and I got our information when we were growing up. You know, we used to get our information by reading magazines, Newsweek, Time. We used to have trusted journalists, the Walter Cronkites of the world, that used to tell us the news and used to let us form an opinion as to whether or not we understood the issue and whether or not we agreed or disagreed with whatever was being reported on. Today, you see the polarization of journalism. You see a lot of fake news that's on social media. So in a way, a lot of our millennials, in my mind, are being brainwashed. They're being brainwashed by a traditional media that has gone rogue liberal. And I have to deal with that with my own children. I have 4 millennial kids. I'm very fortunate that 3 of them are conservatives and 1 is a moderate, and now that she's a business owner, all of a sudden she's becoming much more conservative. But what I'd like to see is more balance in the reporting, more balance on social media, and I think that's why You see U.S. Congress now looking into breaking up Facebook and these large media companies that unfortunately show a very unfair perspective on a lot of issues that we see today that in a way brainwashes a lot of our youngsters that don't get the full picture of what's going on. You know, we just got through celebrating the greatest generation, you know, the D-Day, the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Fortunately, the Millennials were brought up during peaceful times, you know, when we didn't have wars. And I'm not sure today if we had a repeat scenario where we had the proliferation of fascism and communism on the European continent, would we get the dedication that we saw with the greatest generation to storm the beaches of Normandy and to liberate countries that relished democracy and patriotism? I'm not sure we'd fill those boats with people today that were willing to give up their lives to make sure that freedom and democracy is preserved in a very hostile world.
Sadly, it's easier to be ignorant and selfish than it is to be thoughtful, so more people are the former, not the latter. Before we conclude, present a final message to our audience, sir.
You know, I'm a very lucky guy. I never planned on being a politician. It happened by accident. I got angry when we saw graffiti in the city of Temecula, which is the Southern California wine country, and my wife said, you know something, if we're going to live in this city, maybe you should get involved politically and make it a good place for our kids to live. And so I decided to get into the arena and be willing to face the accolades and be willing to face the spears. And I'll tell you, it's been one of the most humbling experiences of my life. I've had the pleasure of, I think, enhancing the quality of life of millions of Californians, people that live in Riverside County, and certainly people that live in the city of Temecula. And it makes me very proud. And my goal is to make a better life for my 5 grandchildren that I have, that they get the same opportunities that I did coming from very humble beginnings and be able to get a great education, open businesses with a lot of government intervention and allowing me to move forward and provide a nice living for my kids. I wish the same for them. We all wish that our children have a better life than we did, and that certainly is going to be my goal for the remaining years that I have on this planet.
Absolutely. Sir, a real privilege to have you on the show, Senator.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Our main sponsor, Bill Falloon with Life Extension, wanted me to give you this gift here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Shall I open it?
Of course, by all
Okay.
means, yes. Now, you're a pharmacist, actually.
I am a pharmacist, that's right.
So Bill would...
And I got to be very careful because we have to be very careful about the gifts we receive.
Oh,
So-
really?
Yes.
So this is Life Extension magazine, and they, for good Lord, for decades now, be pursuing research into addressing the diseases of aging.
Nicotine adenine dinucleotide. You think you're surprised that I know these abbreviations? I have a doctorate in pharmacy from the USC School of Pharmacy, so I used to work with a lot of this stuff.
Fabulous. Okay, so I want to thank you for being with us today. We
My
put this
pleasure.
out of the way. And a great pleasure and privilege, sir.
It's an honor to meet you.
Jews have been a part of what is now Orange County for more than 150 years, when Bavarian immigrant Benjamin Dreyfus arrived in the new town of Anaheim in 1858. Dreyfus did very well here and was soon known as the king of the Anaheim winemakers. Marketing to both the secular and Jewish markets, he was the first large-scale producer of kosher wine in the U.S., making kosher for Passover wine in 1864 from his Anaheim vineyards. He married Leah Wheel, a Jewish woman, and they had 2 sons, Emil and Walter, who were both raised in Anaheim. Benjamin was also active in civic affairs. He served on the city council and was elected mayor of Anaheim 2 years in a row. And he wasn't alone. Fellow Jewish pioneers included Anaheim's first Jewish marshal, Louis Wartenberg, businessman Morris Goodman, banker Gustav Davis, and Solomon Goldstein, who owned Anaheim's first brewery and bar, named, of course, Goldstein Saloon. The first bris in Anaheim in 1877 was for Sheriff Wartenberg's son Michael and was announced in the local newspaper, the Anaheim Gazette, as were other Jewish celebrations and holidays. From 1858 to the turn of the century, the Jewish community here was actively involved in all areas of society and experienced virtually no prejudice. This was typical of the Jewish experience in the West. The Wild West in the late 1800s was religiously tolerant, much different from the life back east and in Europe, and the Jews who lived here thrived. But things were about to change. A major cultural shift occurred in the early 1900s as Midwesterners, lured by good weather and the promise of success, settled here in large numbers, bringing with them a much more closed view of society. The Jews that lived here quickly found themselves facing the very same bigotry that their parents had long ago left behind.
I remember in 1931, I was about 11, 12, Ku Klux Klan on horseback came from Anaheim. They rode all through town, white gowns on them, you know. The chief of police wore cowboy boots, remember? And I was there, and I watched him. He grabbed the head guy off and unveiled him. And he was a very prominent person. I'm not going to mention his name, but that's what happened.
There were some incidences that were not too pleasant, but we sort of override them. In fact, in the schools, like on Passover time, my children took matzahs and explained the Passover to the class, and the teacher was dumbfounded that they could do that. And you know, we did not hide that we were Jewish. We just went along with it. But there were instances that were not too pleasant.
The same thing was happening in LA, but because the Jewish community there was larger and more established, it was better equipped to weather the cultural shift. For the Jews of Orange County, however, this was a major turning point. Many moved away, some intermarried and assimilated, and a few committed families stayed. They would travel to Los Angeles or Long Beach for important holidays and Jewish events, or if they needed kosher meat or Passover products.
When they were living here, my mother-in-law was kosher. And so there used to be a man by the name of Bernstein who had chickens in his garage for sale. Now, they used to get a live chicken, put it in a crate, and travel to Long Beach to get it killed by the sherbet, and then bring it back. And Lillian was in the car, and she just didn't like chickens because she went through that experience of taking a live chicken to Long Beach and bringing it back all quartered.
Despite their small numbers and the underlying anti-Semitism, Orange County's Jews continued to do well, living mostly in the city of Santa Ana. For important occasions, they would get together in each other's homes, but for most Jews, Orange County became the place where you made a living, but not where you actually lived.
My father-in-law-to-be was living in Santa Ana, and his family was living in Los Angeles. He had the business here. Like I say, it started in 1915. And I met Mr. Sam Hurwitz at the temple. And I guess he sort of took a liking to me, and he said, "I wonder if you would like to meet my daughter." And he gave me her phone number on a card, which I think I still have somewhere in my belongings. And I called her, and then I used to date her going into Los Angeles, and things evolved.
The Jewish population of California expanded dramatically after World War II, and Orange County was part of this trend. Jewish veterans, many of whom had been stationed here during the war, saw it as a good place to earn a living and raise a family.
At the time, there were maybe 20 families at the most, and a few during the Depression. I remember one of them moved to Australia, was a tailor, you know. Competition was pretty keen too. But the real influx of the Jewish people came around 1940 because they had an air base here where they trained pilots in Santa Ana Air Base. And that's what brought the big influx, especially the merchants, because all these airmen were training and they needed services, you know.
By now, the community had grown to the point where a synagogue was clearly needed, and in 1943, community leaders, including Sam Hurwitz and Alan's parents, Nathan and Rose Feinbarg, established Orange County's first synagogue, Temple Beth Shalom, in Santa Ana.
There were no temples here, and in 1943, when Alan was in the Navy, they started the only temple that we had at the time, Beth Shalom.
At the time, the services at Temple Beth Shalom at 8th and Bush were starting Friday night at 9 p.m. Now, why 9 p.m.? because that's Friday night, the stores of downtown Santa Ana stayed open till 9 o'clock. And all the Jewish merchants, when they closed the store, they used to walk to the temple from 4th Street to 8th Street and meet their wives or their girlfriends or both at the temple. But they used to walk, and that's why the services were at 9 o'clock at Temple Beth Shalom and 8th and Bush.
In the 1950s, Orange County saw significant growth in the aerospace industry. Companies such as Ford Aeronutronic, Hughes, and Douglas Aircraft recruited engineers, many of them Jewish, from LA, the East Coast, and the Midwest. With the larger Jewish population came more synagogues, community organizations, and schools.
I think it's very optimistic, but I'm an optimistic person.
That's a good question. I don't think anybody knows the true answer, but I think because we have such good weather here, I think the growth of Orange County is going to continue. And the Jewish people like nice things and good weather, and people are living longer too. Living into the 80s and 90s. In fact, I think am I 90?
I feel that we have a future. We will survive more. We're probably always looking to destroy it, but we overcome it.
It's interesting, us Jews, you can push us down wherever we go, and we jump up like daisies.
I think observances are up, tradition is up, commitment is up, affiliation is up, synagogues are growing, centers are growing.
Carrier asks, what does comfort mean to you? At Carrier, comfort means more than just the temperature. And the people who invented modern air conditioning keep inventing new ways to make you comfortable, however you define it.
Life Extension magazine brings you new discoveries in health and anti-aging. Our science-based research and supplements are so advanced they're many years ahead of the medical mainstream, with quality control standards that exceed FDA mandates. Life Extension has covered groundbreaking medical research for more than 35 years. For your health and future, you deserve the best. Learn more at lifeextension.com.
This concludes our special show for today from Palm Springs, California. Thank you so much for being with us.